Hey everybody, Papa Wiggs here. I'm here with Wiggs. We're gonna be talking about our tight end rankings. So our top 30 tight end rankings for PPR, and so we're gonna jump right in. Let's go.
Jonnu Smith.
So Jonnu Smith, obviously he's I think this is his first year with Miami. I think he was with New England last year.
Atlanta.
Oh, Atlanta, that's right. He was with the New England the year before that. And so, last year he had, 580 yards with Atlanta, 3 touchdowns. Listen, I don't think Gazinski was a big, um, I don't think he did a lot for Miami last year. I don't know that Juno Smith's going to do a lot for Miami this year. That's why he's lower on our rankings. I think Miami they don't really use,
They don't use their tight ends much.
yeah, and Gazinski wasn't even on their team last year. I don't even know who Miami's tight end was last year. So, that tells you all you need to know right there. So, anyways, I think if anything, Smith's value is going to be within probably the red zone, possible touchdown target. So I wouldn't expect much to him. So I think we can move on. He's bench player at most. Most teams might not even draft 2 tight ends, so he's probably going to be a waiver wire pickup. So
yeah, he's not going to do much on this team. And
in a 12-man league, I don't see him probably getting drafted.
Yeah, and they have Tyreek and Waddle, so it's gonna be hard for him to get the ball on top of their running backs too. So
yeah, Taysom Hill. This guy, he's interesting because, he's technically their backup quarterback, I believe. He's listed number 2 on their depth chart. That could change though, because I really think that even though he's listed as number 2, I think Rattler is I personally think he was the steal of the draft, and he could potentially be the backup quarterback. So Taysom is, I think, going to see a lot more packages and stuff. But he does have what's his name, Johnson, I think. Who's the other tight end?
Juwan Johnson.
Yeah. So Juwan Johnson is going to be probably their primary target. The interesting thing about Taysom, though, is that even though he's listed as a tight end / QB, they have packages for him. Again, Taysom Hill to me is nothing more than a waiver wire pickup, unless for some reason he proves that he can be more productive yardage wise. He only had 2 touchdowns last year.
Well, that's just receiving. That's not showing like his rushing or his throwing for touchdowns as well. But I don't think he did a whole lot last year. Like the year before, he had actually quite a few rushing touchdowns. So, like you said, they have a lot of packages for him, and he's really got the ability to either throw it, run the ball, receive the ball. He's kind of like a do-it-all type of tight end, and you're never gonna get a consistent performance out of him.
You're not. Some weeks he could do something. Other weeks he's not going to do nothing.
Yeah, and most of the time when we saw it last year, a lot of his games were just straight up like several touchdowns in the game. Then he'd go quiet for a few weeks.
He's just a low end tight end. So listen, when we did the rankings on this, we haven't really, we haven't updated it in the last couple weeks. We're kind of waiting until after training camp. Obviously, Robert Tonyan out of the Vikings, he's got an arrow going down right now. I actually heard that there's a possibility they may even cut him on the Vikings. Initially, when we did this, they were really high on him, but he got hurt. He hasn't been able to do much. The other guys, Josh Oliver, Johnny Munt, and once Hawkinson gets back, which is probably going to be later in the season, maybe week 8, I'm hearing. They're saying anywhere from week 3 to week 8. I kind of think it's going to be after their bye week. I personally, he's probably going to drop out of our top 30 because he hasn't been doing anything, and right now he's really on a bubble.
Oh, don't they have like a wide receiver that just moved to tight end?
Yeah, Keneal Harry also moved to tight end, and they've been using him and stuff. But right now, I kind of see it as you know, it's a toss up between Munt and Oliver as their tight end one. They also got Nick Muse that has been showing something. So and then they got Keneal Harry. I think that his injury that Tanyan got is really probably going to find him out on the bench or out on the off the roster and cut. I really do.
which is unfortunate. I thought he would have had a good year, but can't stay healthy.
That's
You
his
can't play.
problem. He's had issues with health. So
Year in and year out. Luke
I mean, the
Musgrave.
last couple of years he's been healthy, but before that,
Wow, this is a big gap.
yeah. So I don't know. I like Luke Musgrave. Last year he had 350 yards, one touchdown. They keep saying he's gonna be, you know, uh, you know, part of their offense this year. They also got Tucker Croft, who's from South Dakota, where we're at and stuff. But I think Croft has actually been fighting some injuries, or he was at least, and he hasn't really been able to do much. So that's why Musgrave is kind of arrowed up a little bit. But again, Musgrave's a waiver wire pickup as far as I'm concerned. I don't think he's anybody that you should be targeting or I mean, you could draft him later in the draft if you like having two times as a backup tight end, but he's certainly not going to be a starter.
Yeah, he's hard to judge too because he's one of those tight ends I can kind of see getting lost in the sauce. And whenever Kraft's healthy, I actually think Kraft might be a better tight end on that team. But I don't know. Musgrave really didn't show me much last year, and then he got hurt and missed 6 games. So
and that's why Tucker Kraft came in and he actually impressed them. He's a big guy, just like Kraft. Kraft's 6'5", but Musgrave's 6'6". I mean, he's a big target, and so
they both had similar stats. Tucker just had one.
If he's out on the field this year, I can see him being a red zone threat, at some point. But yeah, definitely a backup, at most until he shows more.
Jatavian Sanders.
Yeah, so Jatavian Sanders, I believe this is one of the rookies that the Panthers drafted this year. They're really high on him. He came out of Texas, big target. He's already listed number 1 on their depth chart for tight ends. There's a lot of people that think that he's going to be a huge sleeper this year at the tight end position. So I'm not going to go as far as saying that he's going to jump in the starter. I do think that he's definitely someone you should think about drafting and having on your bench as a backup maybe to start off just to see. Because listen, Chase Young, Bryce Young is going to be looking for, he's going to be looking for, his tight end. He's still a young QB and stuff. So I think he's definitely a guy that is worth drafting and having on your bench. Wait and see, where he kind of fits in with this Carolina Panthers offense, because they went out and they drafted a lot of guys. I mean, they got a receiver in the draft. They got who's the running back? I'm drawing a blank here. They got Brooks, and then they drafted Sanders. So it'll be interesting to see where he fits in this offense. But definitely could be a sleeper.
But they also traded for Deontay too. So I mean, this offense is looking way better than it did a year ago, and I think Bryce Young could have a really good year. And for all we know, Sanders could be a top 10 guy by the end of the year if him and Young get on the same page.
Worth putting on the bench.
Isaiah Likely.
Boy, I like Likely. The only thing that's holding Likely back is Mark Andrews. That's my opinion. I mean, last year he played and he stays healthy. When Andrews was out, really, Andrews is always going to be Lamar's main guy, right? But I'll tell you what, they don't lose a beat when Andrews is out, and they got Likely in there. Actually, Likely's actually probably a little bit more athletic than Andrews. I like this guy. Definitely somebody you should be drafting because hey, Andrews is getting up there, right? And so, I mean, Andrews is 28. He's been dealing, he dealt with injuries last year. I don't know what he did the year before. So, you know, you know, yeah, the last couple years, Andrews has missed a few games. Last year he missed 7. The year before he missed 2. He's only had I think 1 or 2 full seasons since being with Baltimore. So definitely Likely is definitely a good guy to have on the bench as a backup. And who knows? They may make him more part of the offense. But I like this guy. I'm high on him. He's only 24. And if the Andrews does go down, they don't lose a beat.
Yeah, and they're going to have this guy for a long time as long as they, re-sign him and keep him on the roster. He's really athletic, like you said, and he fits in well with this offense when Andrews is hurt.
Any other team, he'd be a starting tight end.
And I could totally see them running some more packages this year with like 2 tight ends in the game with the presence of Derrick Henry, make it look like it's run heavy, and then have both Andrews and Likely pop out. I could see a lot more out of Likely this year just because of the addition of Henry. Okonkwo.
Yeah, Okonkwo from Tennessee. Again, he's he's another young guy. Been in the league 2 years. He stays pretty healthy. He's actually been pretty active in their offense, considering that they had Henry. Yeah. I think he's actually going to go up this year from a production standpoint. He was targeted 77 times. He had 54 receptions, and that was with Derrick Henry on their team. I think this year, with Will Levis being a younger quarterback, yeah, they've got the receiving core that they do, but I definitely think that this guy is going to have an active role, in their offense. Listen, everybody knows that once you get past the top guys here on tight ends, it's kind of a crapshoot when you're ranking.
Oh yeah,
ranking the rest of the guys. Here's my hot take though. This guy, I definitely could see in the top 15, maybe top 12 this year, possibly, because he's another talented guy. So I think his arrow is going up. I'm not saying that he's necessarily a starter, but he's definitely someone you should draft, put on your bench. He's definitely somebody that you would play, on a bye week, and then just see where he is in this offense.
Well, looking at his stats last year at the 54 receptions and 530 yards, really you just tack on a few more touchdowns and he's probably in that top 15 range already. He finished 21st there at tight end. So
right, and they're losing their touchdown guy in the red zone. Henry, was their guy. So
and it should be a more pass heavy offense this year.
Yeah,
too, so.
yeah. I definitely think the arrow goes up on this guy, so definitely someone you should have on your radar.
I think there's actually quite a few sleepers on this team as a whole, as long as Will Levis plays good. If he plays good football, I think there's a lot of sleepers on this team.
As long as Will keeps eating his Hellmann's, man, he's going to be good.
Got Noah Fant.
Yeah, Fant's, I had him a little bit lower on my list. I think he's kind of dealing with something right now. I believe he's supposed to be returning to practice, or he did return to practice. I believe he's listed number 1 on their depth chart still. I did read some stuff that he's supposed to have a more active role in their offense this year. He did have 32 catches last year for 400 and some yards. Again, here's a guy that, if you like 2 tight ends, you could definitely draft. He's to me more of a bye week replacement right now until we kind of see where he fits in. They got to change at the coaching staff here. I'm hearing he's supposed to be have a bigger role in the offense, but it's kind of a wait and see because we haven't been able to see anything with him just recently coming back to practice.
Yeah, and he's a little harder to judge because he did come off a year with no touchdowns, which kind of is a big blow, especially at the tight end spot. You need to be seeing at least 4, 5, 6 touchdowns there at the tight end spot for them to be like a top like 15 guy, and I think he's more than capable of it. He just wasn't on the same page with Geno last year, apparently.
And he's usually pretty healthy, so I think this was just something minor. I'm not really too overly concerned about it, but he definitely was, pretty consistent with the Broncos, and then it's kind of faded off when he went to Seattle. And so number 22, we got Kate Otten here for Tampa Bay. Again, this is another guy that I like Kate Otten. I definitely think he's got an opportunity to make it into the top 15. I think he's got the right quarterback in Mayfield. Last year he was targeted 67 times. He had 47 receptions. He had over 450 yards, 4 touchdowns. They do like to if they're not targeting Evans, they do like to look at Otten in the red zone. I've noticed that. So he's definitely a guy that I would consider. You definitely need to look at drafting him. He needs to be on your radar. I think that he's he's a backup right now. Borderline one maybe, depending on how he starts off, but definitely a guy worth drafting and having on your bench for a bye week replacement or a backup if your other tight end's not working out.
Or even a waiver wire. He, at least in our league last year, was on the waiver for most of the year, so.
Yeah. He's got a lot of talent, though.
He definitely does.
He's definitely a young, talented guy.
It's just with the healthy Chris Godwin, and then you got Mike Evans. It's going to get overshined when it comes to the touchdown production a little bit. But he did have 4 touchdowns last year. It's not too bad.
Yeah, and they like to target him in the red zone. So
Hunter Henry.
Listen, I was high on Henry. I still am high on Henry. I think he's dealing with an injury. They say it's a lower body injury. This guy's got a lot of talent. I mean, last year he had 6 touchdowns. Mac Jones really liked him when he was with New England. I'm hearing that he was supposed to be, obviously they got Drake May. I think that he's definitely going to be an active part of New England's offense. I'm just not high on a lot of New England's offensive players. The only player that I'm really have any level of confidence that could have a decent year this year is Stevenson, and as long as he stays healthy, until I see some of these other guys and what their offense is going to do, because they got a completely new coaching staff, so it's hard to say. And Hunter Henry may or may not be ready for week 1. Initially, I would have told you maybe a borderline starter, but right now, his arrow's kind of going down a little bit until we know exactly what his health is going to be like. So, I mean, he definitely is draftable as a bench player, but I wouldn't rely on him, especially in the early weeks, as a starter until you find out more about his injury.
And he's always kind of a frustrating one, at least I've noticed when I've had him on my teams, because it's never like a consistent like go-to type guy. Like you're gonna have a typical tight end performance of going back and forth unless you have a Kelce.
Well, here's the problem: the second year he was with New England, they brought in Geno Smith.
Oh, that's true.
So they had they were actually splitting it between the tight ends. Geno Smith was taken away from his production. That's why you saw him go down in 2022 from 9 touchdowns down to 2 because they brought in Geno Smith. That's then his production went up last year to 6. So
and he missed 3 games.
He's a quality player. You just need to find out where his health is going to be
and see how the quarterback play turns out this year. That's
and I've always said it. Tight end's a rookie's best friend at quarterback. So
Mike
Gesicki, he's an interesting character. He was with Miami. He actually had a few decent years with Miami when he his sophomore, junior, and senior year with Miami. He actually did okay. 2020, 2021, he had over 700 yards. not a huge touchdown guy those years, but last year in Miami, he did have 5 touchdowns. So not last year, I'm sorry, 2022 he had five touchdowns in Miami. Last year in New England, he just was really not a factor. Um, you know what, I'm not, he's listed number 1 on the depth chart. Again, to me, he's just a bench player until we see exactly where he falls in with this Cincinnati offense, because he's brand new this year. And I just don't know. I just don't have any level of confidence of him right now, in that Cincinnati offense until we see where Burrow feels comfortable going and stuff. With them losing Mixon, maybe, I don't know, but
well, and losing Boyd as well. So
yeah, so it'll be interesting. I just, to me, every time these guys start a new team, you just never know where they're going to fall into the plans of the offense.
yeah, and I think the only reason I ranked him at 19 is because I think that offense is going to be more pass heavy. Um, I don't know if Zach Moss is really going to have that big of an impact in their offense this year. I could really see them swaying more towards the passing game and having Chase Brown in there, but I think them losing Tyler Boyd opens up a better chance of Mike Gesicki having a better year this year than in prior years, because he's always kind of been stuck behind like 3 guys on another off. Or sorry, he's really just been stuck behind Tyreek Hill going up for 1,600 yards a year.
And I agree with you. The other thing that we didn't talk about here is that Chase is still holding out. So, and they're saying he's not going to get on the field until he gets a new contract. So if that goes into the regular season, then
yeah, then his stock kind
of then we could be talking about it. So right now, I think he's definitely a draftable guy. I wouldn't consider him a starter right now unless you were desperate, bye week replacement, but definitely a bench player.
Tyler Conklin.
Yeah, listen, Tyler, he's another one of my sleeper tight ends this year. Uh, this guy, I loved him when he was in Minnesota. Um, Last year, he had over 600 yards on 87 targets. He had 61 receptions. He wasn't a huge TD guy, but here's the difference. This year, he's got Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is out on that field. Rodgers likes to use his tight ends. He likes to use them in the red zone, especially. So I think Conklin could have one of his best seasons ever if Rodgers stays healthy. I really do. I think Rodgers is going to be really dependent on his tight end and his running backs coming out of the backfield along with Garrett Wilson. And whenever they're in the red zone, to me, take this to the bank. I think Conklin is a guy that he's always going to be looking for.
Well, yeah, I think his main targets will be like Garrett Wilson and then maybe like Brees Hall, but he's all like with those 2 weapons alone. If they don't get open, you have Tyler Conklin probably wide open somewhere there on the field. So like, I think Conklin's in the perfect spot. He's got the receiver, he's got a running back to help him get open. He doesn't need to be like a Mark Andrews or Travis Kelce like being the guy, but he's gonna get the ball a lot. And Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. Like this dude's a freak of nature. As much as I hate to admit that, but
well, in the last 2 years, he had 61 receptions last year, 58 the year before.
What terrible quarterback.
And he was averaging, around 600 yards each of those years if you combine the two, and stuff. So I don't know. I just think that Conklin's another guy that's only going to go up. It wouldn't surprise me if he hits into the top 10 and stuff. He's definitely someone that should be on your radar for drafting to have as a backup. And you know what? I'm a big believer in the QB tight end combination in fantasy. So if you got Aaron Rodgers and you're thinking about starting Aaron Rodgers and that's your QB, I wouldn't hesitate to draft Conklin and put him in as your starting tight end if you don't got one of the other studs.
And think about it this way too. His last year in Minnesota, he had 600 yards with Kirk Cousins as his quarterback. I think we can, for the most part, agree Aaron Rodgers a little bit better than Kirk Cousins, but that aside, that alone, I should say, is like a solid reason why you should at least have him as a bench player. Juan Johnson.
Yeah, here's another guy that is interesting. Uh, you know, his biggest problem is he just can't stay healthy. He hasn't had a full season with the Saints since he's been drafted. Last year he missed 4 games. The year before he missed a game. His sophomore year he missed 3 games. His freshman year, his rookie year, he missed 10. This guy just can't stay on the field. When he's on the field, he's a beast. Especially in the red zone. You know, he had 4 touchdowns last year in only 13 games. The year before he had 7. So it's really hard to judge this guy. You know, and he's dealing with something right now as well. So my biggest problem with this guy, and actually I think I probably have him ranked a little bit too high, is that I don't have any level of confidence of him staying on the field. If he shows me he can stay on the field and stuff and be consistent on the field, I definitely think he has an opportunity, you know, to be in a top 20 tight end. But you know, so I think I have him a little bit high. I definitely think his arrow's going down because of the fact that he is dealing with a little bit of an injury and stuff. So you got to keep your eye open on him. To me, right now, I have no level of confidence. To me, I think a Conklin, a Gadzinski, you know, even a Fant probably are Otten are a better option than Johnson right now.
Yeah, I can agree with that. But if he does stay healthy, that could be a pretty good year for him. They did lose Thomas, so moving on from him, we got T.J. Hawkinson.
Listen, I love Hawk. I think Hawkinson's was a great addition for the Vikings. He had an unfortunate injury, you know, last year late in the season. I mean, he did play 15 games. You know, so but you know that might be part of the reason why Detroit got rid of him though, because you know, 2 of the 3 or you know, all 3 seasons with Detroit, he didn't play a full season. And 2 of those 3 seasons, he only played 12 games, so he missed 5 games in each of those seasons. So uh, you know, Hawk's got to stay healthy. When he's healthy, he's up there with every one of the stud. I mean, he just signed a big contract with the Vikings. He's a stud when he's out on the field. He's got to stay healthy. Here's the thing about Hawk: if you're gonna draft him, this is what I'd recommend: draft him, put him on your IR, and stuff. I don't go crazy drafting them too high because listen, you know what they're saying, and you guys know we follow the Vikings is that it could be anywhere from week 3 to week 8. Listen, he got hurt. I believe it was in week 15 last year is when he got hurt. That's late in the season. It was an ACL. You know, what, week 15 in the season, that was like December. There's a good chance that we're not going to see Hawkinson until November. You know, I think personally, there's not a chance we're going to him before the bye. I think the Vikings are going to take it very slow with him, especially given the fact that they just signed him to a big contract last year. So if you are going to draft him and he's there later in your draft, go ahead, draft him, stick him on your IR, pick up another tight end on the waivers.
Yeah, I don't see him even when he comes back. I think he'll be eased into it, and then by then it's like really ranking wise, this is probably like his peak, right in this range. Like, if he was playing a full season, I think we agree he'd probably be in our top 5, but he's just not. He's kind of sitting there for a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure that they're depending on how their season goes. Who knows if they play him? I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
like if they're losing, they might just let him sit all year.
I think they're going to be cautious. Ben Sinnott, listen, this is another rookie. Came out of Kansas State, 6'4", 247 pounds. Commanders drafted him. Listen, Zach Ertz is still, might take some production away from him. I'm hearing nothing but great things about this guy. I think that he's another one of these to me, he's a deep sleeper until we kind of see where he is. It wouldn't surprise me that he becomes a favorite of Jaden Daniels. Daniels is another rookie quarterback. it wouldn't surprise me if he relies a little bit on Sonat, especially at the beginning of the year, and stuff. Zach Ertz has a history of, kind of the last few years of being hurt. So, so I don't know where Ertz is, gonna fall in. This is Ertz's first year and stuff, so it'll be interesting to see where he falls out. I'm definitely high on this guy. I think he's definitely someone you should draft, put on the bench, see how he does. Who knows? He could surprise you and be Jaden Daniels' favorite target.
He could be. Like, this offense is set to really kind of draft anyone and just hope Daniels connects with them, because outside of Terry McLaurin, really everyone is. Oh, I guess Dotson's not new to the offense, but everyone else from Luke McCaffrey to Sanat, even Austin Eckler is all kind of new to the offense. So I could see him leaning the way of Sanat. Could also see him going McLaurin, Dotson, but even then, it's like an offense where we could totally see Sanat have a pretty solid year.
And keep this in mind. I want to point this out. Dan Quinn, that came from the Cowboys, he brought in a lot of coaches from the Cowboys staff. Okay. Um, what is the one thing the Cowboys like to use in their offense? They like to use their tight ends. So something to keep in mind. I know a lot of you guys out there may not pay attention to that. I do. So keep that in mind. So
Dalton Schultz.
man, I I think Dalton Schultz is great. I think Houston got a gem with him. He's definitely, he had some good years with the Cowboys for sure. Last year I think he did miss a couple games, but you know what? Listen, he might get lost a little bit. I still think that Stroud is still going to be looking at him. He targeted him 88 times last year. He had 59 receptions, 5 touchdowns. Schultz is definitely, to me, needs to be drafted. Borderline tight end number 1, dependent, like again, even though we have him at number 15 here, remember, once you get past those stud tight ends at the beginning of the draft, and I think Wiggs would agree with me, it's kind of a crapshoot, guys, when it comes to tight ends. So, if you got CJ Stroud as your quarterback and you don't have a stud tight end, Schultz wouldn't be a bad bet to draft, because again, like I mentioned, I always like in fantasy the QB a tight end connection, especially if you're not able to get that stud
until you drop them to the waiver wires and your son picks them up. But
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Dalton Schultz, even just looking when he was on the Cowboys, he's had 4 straight years where he's been targeted basically 90 plus times in each season, and he's averaged about 5 touchdowns each year. He's definitely a guy you got to draft if you especially want like a bench tight end, but he could even be a starter on your team if you really wanted him to. Like you said, there's like what, 5 or 6 like tight ends that are truly like those guys, and then everyone else is just kind of in the mix. Like I think
he's higher end. I think, I definitely think he's got a shot to make the top 10. He could make it into the top 10 this year.
But like anyone from like 7 to even 20, to be honest, really could just be your starter at some point in the year. It's hard to judge once you get out of like the Mark Andrews and Kelsey's and all of them. So they did have a good connection with Stroud, so that might continue. At Fryermuth.
Yeah, Fryermuth, he's he's another guy. He was pretty healthy to his first couple of years, and then he had some injuries last year. He's definitely the guy there in Pittsburgh for the tight end. I think he's gonna, if he stays healthy this year, his numbers are gonna go up, definitely. I think there's some people that say that that have him ranked a little bit lower. I don't personally. I think Fryermuth is going to be an active part of that offense. I really do. I think that if he's out on the field, especially in the red zone, I think he's going to be an active part of this offense. Here's the thing I'll say. I really would like to know what the quarterback situation is going to be like. In Pittsburgh, uh, it's a mess. I just watched an interview with Mike Tomlin. They still haven't decided who's going to be their starting quarterback. They're not happy with their offense at all right now. So with that said, I still think Fryermuth has consideration as a low end tight end one, in my eyes. But if you have a better option that you draft before him, obviously he's definitely a backup.
I think if Fryermuth stays healthy, I don't really think it matters what quarterback is playing as their starter. Both the quarterbacks they have do like to utilize their tight ends. You look at Cole Kmet from last year with Fields, had an unbelievable year. Kind of was overshined by DJ Moore throughout most of the year. But you look at Russell Wilson, may not have done much with his tight ends there in Denver, but you look back when he was, with Gerald Everett and what they did. So I really think both quarterbacks have a good connection with them. I don't really think it matters who's the starter. To me, I think he's probably a top 12, maybe even a top 10 guy at the bare minimum.
I wouldn't. I'd agree with you, Wiggs. Had they not brought in two brand new quarterbacks, I think it still takes time to build chemistry. Especially given the fact that Russell Wilson's been out most of the training camp, so that's why he makes me a little nervous.
But if he is finding the holes in any defense, it's just a free.
Yeah, we'll see.
Give me the dang ball.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe that is Cole Kmet, as we were just talking
about. Yeah, Kmet. Listen, I think I have him maybe ranked a little bit low here. I really think that Kmet has. I mean, last year he had 73 receptions for over 700 yards, 6 touchdowns. I think this year it's going to be even more. Um, Listen, I know everybody's going to say, yeah, but they got Keenan Allen, they brought Odunze in. Listen, they got a rookie quarterback in Caleb Williams. I think no matter what, everybody's going to get their piece of the pie there in Chicago. And I definitely think Komet's going to be a big part. He's 6'6". He's going to be a big part in their red zone. I feel. I'm not sold on Keenan Allen this year. I think we mentioned this in the receiver thing. Keenan Allen's put on a lot of weight. He's really slow this year from what I've been reading. I don't know that Keenan Allen's going to be a huge impact in that red zone. That's where I think Komet's going to be. I can see him having 10 touchdowns in the red zone this year. I definitely think Komet's a starting tight end. I definitely think if you're planning on drafting Caleb Williams and you're gonna start him this year, which I know some people are high on Caleb Williams and they might start him. If you don't got a stud tight end, you draft Kmet as your tight end because I'm telling you, I definitely think Komet's gonna have probably his best season since being in Chicago.
Yeah, I'm not too sure how to judge Kmet right now. I think his value to me would be a lot better if he still had Fields because those two had a really great connection over the last 2 years. It's just hard because I haven't seen Caleb Williams in a legit game, not this preseason BS, but I don't know. And there's a lot of weapons on this team. I know that doesn't really bother you much, but it's just hard for me to judge. For me, I want him on my team still, but he'd probably be a bench player, maybe possible starter after seeing him a few weeks. I think he's definitely someone you should draft for sure. He's right there on that cusp of a mid to low end tight end, but again, it's kind of a crapshoot, like you said.
Right.
It's hard for me to judge, and I just am sad that I don't get to see a Fields and Kmet combo.
Yeah, I think I ranked him too low. I think I should have had him ranked up closer. I had him at 15. I think I should have had him, maybe top 10.
It's your man right there.
Yeah, so listen, I'm really high on Brock Bowers. I think this guy is going to be a beast this year. He's definitely a sleeper. I think the Raiders are going to line him up as a tight end, line him up in the slot. I think they're going to move him around. I think he's gonna have I think he's gonna be used similar to what Kyle Pitts is. I think he's just that talented of a tight end. He's definitely one of my sleepers this year. Uh, you know what? I definitely think he could be worth starting. I do. I think he can be a starter right out of the gate. I know he's got Mayer there in the Raiders as well, but I don't. I think they're going to use a lot of two tight end sets, because I think what they're going to do is they're going to use Adams and Myers, and I think you're going to see Bowers and Mayer in there a lot together, and where Mayer's more in the tight end set and Bowers is going to be like in the slot or something like that. I really do think they're going to move him around, and he's going to be out there a lot. So I definitely think he's got a chance, to have a really great season. He's a big target. Everybody knows he was the highest. He was drafted in the first round this year. So I think he has a chance to have a great season. I think he could have 600-700 yards, maybe even more, and possibly, anywhere from it's hard with Devontae because Devontae's a huge red zone threat. Same with Myers, but I think he could still have maybe 5 touchdowns.
Well, the thing I like that the Raiders did is made Gardner Minshew as their quarterback, as their starter at least, and I think Minshew has always found his tight ends on offenses that he's played with, and I really think him and Bowers could have a good connection this year, and I could even possibly see Bowers in that top 10 range. I don't know if I'd say the same with O'Connell at quarterback, but I don't know, something about Gardner Minshew being the starting quarterback kind of like gives me a little bit of a boost here on Bowers.
Yeah, I definitely think he's going to be top 10 this year for tight ends.
David Njoku.
Yeah, Njoku's another guy. This guy is a beast. Uh, he's just he's a playmaker. I think he's going to have an active role in that Browns offense again this year. Last year he was targeted 123 times. So he had over 860 yards and 6 touchdowns. I think he's going to have a similar type year, maybe a little bit better, but I think it's going to be right around the same. He's definitely a tight end number 1 for sure. I definitely think he's going to be in the top 12, possibly top 10. You know, um, Probably top 10 for sure. Definitely a starter and should be on your radar for sure.
Yeah, I could see him being a starter. I think he might go down a little bit in production this year just with them adding in Jerry Judy, but I don't think it's going to be anything crazy. I think it's going to be more so like his 2022 season where he's only targeted like 80 times and still has over 600 yards. I could still see him being a big like red zone threat. I could see the touchdowns going up, but I think the yards and receptions might go down just a little bit with Jerry Judy being added. Well, now on Dallas Goddard.
Yeah, Goddard again. He's I like Goddard. Last year his production kind of went down because he was only in 14 games. Again, he's another one of those guys that he hasn't played a full season. Crying out loud! I think he played 1 full season his rookie year. And so he hasn't been out there for his sophomore year. I don't remember if they played 17 games that year or not, but anyways, he's hard for me to judge. He's definitely talented. I think he's worth a starting spot, but I consider him a low end number 1. I do think that the 3 guys we just talked about have the potential of having a better year than Goddard this year. But I think he's probably going to be right around the same as he did last year, right around that 50 receptions, and, between 50 and 60 and around 600 yards. He's not a huge touchdown guy there. Who knows? That could change. It all depends on if they still plan on using the tush push, whatever. But he only had 3 TDs last year. So to me, he's low end, a low end 1, tight end. but just make sure that you're keeping your expectations low because he did drop down in production last year, and it wouldn't surprise me if he drops down again this year.
Yeah, he just needs to stay on the field. If he could stay on the field, I could totally see him having a top 10 year. That's just his biggest problem is injury. I think him and Hurts still have a pretty solid connection. It's just a matter of playing the games, staying on the field. Um, it's hard with something like the tush push to judge a tight end, but I think this year he could have a little bit better of a year. Maybe have like 5 touchdowns, about the same amount of yards. Just it's hard sometimes behind like AJ Brown and Devontae Smith to be like the standout guy, but I really just have like a gut feeling that he's going to be good this year. Jake Ferguson.
Listen, you guys know how I feel about the Cowboys. I'm not a huge Cowboys fan. Every time I've had a Cowboys on a fantasy team, they've always screwed me. So I don't draft Cowboys. You can ask Wigs here. They never are on my team. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's C. Lamb. I'm not drafting them. I just don't do Cowboys anymore. With that said, though, Ferguson had a great year last year. He was targeted over 100 times. You can't discredit the fact that he's on an explosive offense with Dak and stuff. So I expect that he's probably going to have similar type year. Could be a little bit better if they don't figure out the CD contract situation. Um, but I think he's probably going to be right around there. He'll probably be a top 10 tight end.
Yeah, I think his production will be about the same. Brandon Cooks really didn't take too much away from him last year, which honestly I was shocked by. I thought Cooks would have a bit of a better year, but Ferguson kind of came out of nowhere and just had a really stud-like year last year, and I just continue to see that happening, especially with this connection with Prescott like he had last year. And if CD holds out, you really have Brandon Cooks and Ferguson on your team to throw to. That's really all you have.
Listen, guys, I know all of you out there have that one team that you just have never drafted a guy from that team. Well, that's me when it comes to the Cowboys.
George Kittle.
Kittle, I love Kittle. I think Kittle is, uh, you know, um, he's been pretty consistent with the 49ers. Again, he's got a history of missing a game here, a game there. There was one season where he missed half the season, but that was like 4 years ago. Um, you know, Last year he had over 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns. I think he's going to be right around there if he's healthy and he's out on the field. Last year's he probably didn't play the last game because they were in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So that would explain that. So yeah, I think that Kittle is consistent. He's getting up there in age, but he's still an active part of that offense. And at any given point, he can pop off for 10 touchdowns.
Yeah, he's just a really consistent tight end overall and pretty great to have. Most of the seasons looking at it, like as long as he played 14 games, he was kind of just in that top 5 range outside of his rookie year in the league. But he, in those years where he was hurt, he put up a lot of yards and a decent chunk of touchdowns. He's typically good for 5+ touchdowns. So obviously, to me, like clear cut starter. If you were to get him on your team, the dude's a beast, and I think his production might even be a little bit better than it was last year.
I know some people might think we got him ranked a little bit low, but I think he's right where he needs to be.
Because at any point he can kind of just be lost in the mix. So I think you gotta have to take that into perspective too, because he does have a really stacked offense with CMC and Debo and Ayuk. Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah, you know what? I have Dalton in my top 4 or top 5 tight ends. I ranked him number 4. I think he's going to have a huge role in the Buffalo offense this year. This guy is definitely a starter on your team. If you got Josh Allen on your team, Kincaid, and you're looking for a tight end, I would pair him up with Josh Allen in a heartbeat. I think he's going to be a top, in the top 5 this year. I think he's got the potential to even be higher. Could be top 3. Wouldn't surprise me if he ends up even higher than that. I'm really high on him this year. Yeah, they drafted Keenan Coleman at receiver. They got Shakir, and They got Curtis Samuel. Samuel's dealing with an injury. MVS, Valdez Scantlin's injured. They're dealing with some injuries right now. KJ Hamler's injured. Uh, you know, I think Kincaid's going to have a monster year.
And I think with them losing Stephon Diggs, you kind of have to use Kincaid quite a bit. Like Knox may have pretty solid production this year, but aside from touchdowns last year, Kincaid looked really good. If he just had a few more touchdowns, he would have been in that top 7, top 6 range. He only had 2 touchdowns, but he had 73 receptions and 670 yards.
And it's hard with that because Josh Allen
he likes to run the ball.
He likes to run the ball in the red zone. So I definitely think that there's a good shot that he gets anywhere from 90 to 100 receptions this year. I think he's definitely going to be over 1,000 yards. I think he could be around that 1,200 mark. I mean, I think that he could, he's lining himself up to put his name up there with Kelsey's of the world. He's that talented.
Moving on from Dalton Kincaid, we have Travis Kelce.
Yeah. Listen, I know people are going to say, dude, you're crazy. You got him at 6. I ranked him at 10. Listen,
that's all him, guys. By the way,
listen, I don't think Kelsey's going to be in the top 5 this year. I really don't. I think they've got a lot of young receivers this year. I think Rice. There's talk that he may not even be suspended this year. Yes, they lost Hollywood Brown, but they got Xavier Worthy. They got Sky Moore. They still got Rice. They got a lot of young guys here. Noah Gray is not a bad tight end either. I think that Kelce, lost a step last year. Yeah, he still had 92 receptions. Blah blah blah. He was close to 1,000 yards. I think his production is going to continue to go down. And the only reason I think he came back this year is because they won the Super Bowl and he wants to try to get that three-peat. If they don't go to the Super Bowl and win it this year, which I don't think they will, I think that they're going to be lucky to make the playoffs. Again, that's my opinion and stuff. I think there's a good chance after this year he retires. I just don't think he's going to have as great a year, as he has in the past. I think the addition of Pacheco at running back is going to take away some of his red zone opportunities because I think Pacheco is going to be used in the red zone a lot more from a running perspective because of the way he runs. So I'm not high on Kelce. Listen, Wiggs has got him ranked at 3. I respect that. He could very well be number 3 this year. I just don't think he is. I think he's too busy with a lot of other things, and he's just not going to have the same type of Kelce season, and I think people should lower their expectations.
I think Kelce will be fine. He's going to get the targets. Him and Mahomes have the connection. He's going to have probably 85, 90 plus receptions. Have the touchdown. I think he's going to be fine. That's all I have to say about it. You have his hot take. That's the entertainment at this point. I just think Kelce's going to have a Kelce year.
I think he's going to be one of those players that's going to be a bust. That's my opinion. Ingram, I think we got this guy. He might be even a little bit low. I don't know. We'll see. But I'll tell you what, they did draft Brian Thomas. I think Brian Thomas at receiver is going to be good. I think he's been looking good. I think he's going to be one of those rookies out of this season that's going to surprise people this year and is definitely a sleeper. So I think Ingram, this guy is talented. Yeah, he's up there in age. It wouldn't surprise me if Ingram is in the top 5, or in the top 3. Could be. I don't know. We'll see. I think he'll be right around what he did last year. I don't know that he's going to have 114 receptions. I think that the addition of Brian Thomas this year is going to take away from that, and Gabe Davis as well. Plus they got Kirk, and if Kirk stays healthy, so I don't necessarily know he's gonna hit that 100 reception remark, but I think he'll be in that 90 range probably. Close to that 1,000-yard mark. I don't know that he'll have. I think he'll be around the 4 or 5 touchdown range. But I think he's definitely going to be up there.
Yeah, I think he'll. I think we have him honestly like right in the perfect spot. I mean, personally, I think he should be down the spot, but um, he's been consistent in Jacksonville. The only issue I have with him, and well, I guess he wasn't that bad the last 2 years with the Giants, but he has had injury history. It hasn't been for a few years, but like you said, he's getting up there in age. Injuries are more likely to happen now at this point, but I could totally see him still having a full healthy season. Maybe around 80 receptions for maybe 800 yards. I could see him averaging 10 yards there, as he's done in quite a few seasons. And I could see him actually having a few more touchdowns. Um, but we'll kind of see. I think just like the drop there in targets and receptions is kind of made up by like one or two more touchdowns, but not to the point of what we have ahead.
Here's the other thing too. Last year was the first year for Doug Peterson, I believe, as their head coach, and Doug Peterson was in Philadelphia, and he loves to use his tight ends. So that's why I think we saw his production go up last year. So I still think he'll be over that 90 range, but I think the addition of Brian Thomas is going to cut into him.
And I honestly, he could be around the same as well. I mean, they had Kelvin Ridley last year with the who was it, Zay Jones, I believe.
Yeah, true.
So maybe it's just similar to like last year because you bring in Brian Thomas, who I think can match Kelvin Ridley, basically the same, and Gabe Davis might just have a step on Zay Jones, but realistically, this offense doesn't look too much different than it did last year. Just different names of players and different players. Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, you know what? I think Kyle Pitts is going to have the best year of his career this year. I really do. I think that you guys heard me say it before, and I'll say it again. Arthur Smith did not use Kyle Pitts the way he should have. Yeah, he was targeted 90 times last year, but it was with terrible quarterback play. He only had 53 receptions, and I would argue that the majority of those that he didn't catch were probably ones that were uncatchable. So Kirk Cousins coming in this year, I think Kyle Pitts he's gonna have a breakout year. He had over 1,000 yards his rookie year, but I think that's before they brought in Arthur Smith. His rookie year he had 68 receptions. I think this year he's gonna have over 1,000 yards. I think he's gonna have 80 receptions. I see him definitely having at least 5 touchdowns, if not more. I'm really high on Kyle Pitts. I think that Kyle was probably the one that jumped up and down when Atlanta brought in Kirk Cousins last year.
I mean, hey, I love to hear that. He's on my team right now, so I do think he'll have a better year this year than he has in the last two. Last year wasn't a bad year. It's just like you said, bad quarterback play. And realistically, if he just connected on like 10 more targets, we're talking like another probably like 150, 200 yards, maybe another touchdown or two. I know he was missed on quite a few touchdowns last year. So he does get the red zone targets. They're going to be lining him up at receiver every now and then as well. So
they're going to move him around. He's only 23, 6'6", 246 pounds. This guy is a freak of nature.
And the red zone, I think, is going to be his best friend this year. And I'm excited to see what he does because
I think he's going to have a great year. It wouldn't surprise me if he cracks the top 3.
He might even be the top guy. Cousins loves his tight ends. Moving on, we got Trey McBride.
Yeah, you know what? Listen, we're into the top 3 now. I think any of these guys in the top 3 are interchangeable. I'll be honest with you. I think there's a couple guys that that we've already talked about that could reach the top 3. I just think that McBride, is gonna he's gonna have a breakout year this year. He broke out last year, with over 800 yards and 81 touchdowns. I think the combination of him and Marvin Harrison, they also got Dortch there. I think that he's going to come out and he's going to have a great year. I think he's going to have over 1,000 yards for sure, maybe 1,200. I definitely think that he could, he could have around 5 touchdowns. But I'm high on this guy. That's why I got him in my top 3.
Yeah, and I think he's gonna be a top tight end here. I would more so say top 5, just due to the fact that I think Kyler Murray's rushing ability and able to get into end zone is kind of like a Dalton Kincaid situation where it could take away a few touchdowns, but I could definitely see him over 1,000 yards. I really only see him at 4 or 5 touchdowns. I think Harrison will take away a lot of those targets in the red zone. But I still think he's going to get targets there in the red zone. Numero dos. Sam Laporta.
Yeah, you know what? What can we say? Laporta he came out last year in his rookie season, and he made Detroit look like geniuses, for trading away Hawkinson. I know a lot of people were like, "Why'd you guys trade him away?" Well, they drafted Laporta, and he comes in. What's he do? He tears it up. He has almost 900 yards on 86 receptions. He was targeted over 120 times. He had 10 touchdowns. Again, this is another example of, they got a decent, 1-2 punch at wide receiver, more so number one. I think Jameson Williams is going to prove his worth there. I think but I think Laporta is going to be a big part of this offense. He could end up number one this year, as tight end, but I definitely think he's probably gonna break that 1,000 yards this year. I really think he will, and I definitely think he's gonna have around 10 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think he's gonna have a really good year. I think he's gonna have a similar year. I don't think much is gonna change. I think he's gonna be a top 2, top guy, maybe even still this year. But yeah, there's not much to say. He came out, proved everyone wrong for oh, why did you guys trade away Hawkins? Oh, look, there's a reason right there. They found their guy, and he's going to be unbelievable. Mark Andrews, number 1.
Yeah, I know a lot of you guys out there are going to say, you guys are crazy. Why do you got Andrews as number 1? There's no way he's going to be number 1. Listen, I think that Mark Andrews is going to bounce back this year, from his injury last year. That's just my opinion. Could he drop down? I think any of these, I'll be honest with you, I think any of the top 6 guys we have on here top 7 guys have the potential to be the tight end number 1 this year. I mean, Wiggs, would you agree with that? I mean, so I just got a gut feeling that Mark Andrews is going to have a bounce back season. I think that he's going to have, as long as he's out on that field, I think he's going to have over 1,300 yards. He's always been Lamar's favorite target. He's always been, when he's out on the field for a full season, he's always been over 100 targets most of the time. A couple of the seasons he was right around that 100 target. I just gotta, I'm going with my gut. My gut says that he's gonna have a great year. I really believe that. I think Lamar is hungry for a Super Bowl, and he's gonna go to his favorite target.
Yeah, and it's Mark Andrews. Just like looking at it, you pointed it out. Over 100 targets in several seasons here with Lamar, or right on that cusp of 100. But even just looking at his stats from last year, he played 10 games, had 6 touchdowns, and over 500 yards. We're talking at least another 30 targets minimum there in that offense, and he probably hits 10 touchdowns with the way it was looking. So
he was on. I think if he didn't miss the 7 games, and let's be honest, he probably would have only played in 6 of them because they probably would have sat him the last game. He could have still hit. He would have been over 1,000 yards for sure.
Yeah, he would have had an unbelievable year if he didn't get hurt. He would have easily been top 3. I don't think anyone can argue that, really. And looking at it, there's been 3 years there where did Lamar play these 3 years, or was Flacco still there? 2018. So yeah, look, Lamar's always looked his way. So I'm excited to see what they do this year. There's been several seasons here where Lamar has targeted him a lot of times, and he's gotten a lot of touchdowns.
So, and let me just say this: I think between Andrews, Laporta, McBride, Pitts, Ingram, Kelsey, and Kincaid. I mean, you could make an argument for Kittle maybe as well. I think between any of those guys, it's really close. I really think it's really close. I think it's a strong tight end group this year. I really do. I know a lot of people always freak out when they don't get one of the top tight ends. I really feel that this year's tight end group is going to be a strong group, no matter what. So I think any one of those guys that I just named off could shoot up and take that number one spot. I'm, you know, I'll be honest with you, I was surprised that Wiggs and I agreed on this one and stuff. So, again, everybody's got their own opinion. I'm just going with my gut, what I think. I think the only thing that's going to hold Andrews back this year is if he's not on the field. But if he's on the field and healthy all season, I think he's gonna tear it up. I have no doubt in my mind that he's not. So I'm definitely high on Mark Andrews this year as long as he's out on the field.
And I think there is a lot of depth here at tight end. Even if you don't get one of those, I mean, I'd probably say top 9. I might even switch Njoku with Goddard there and make it a top 10. I think there's really 10 to 12 guys you can really draft and has as your tight end 1. But even if you don't get one of those guys, I think the guys we have on this list here at like 12 to like 19, I'd probably flip Conklin and Juwan Johnson around. But I think any one of those guys are draftable as well. Like, yes, you're taking a risk with someone like Hawkinson, but it's TJ Hawkinson. He should still be up there in points and touchdowns, especially with some lackluster play we're going to see this year on a Sam Darnold. I think there's a lot of options. I wouldn't even stress about drafting a tight end until late because I think really any one of those top 20 guys can give you decent points. And realistically, tight ends, unless you get one of those top 8, are just kind of bonus points for your team.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this. I mean, a lot of people, depending on the strategy that you use, are going to try to go after a top tight end. And that's fine. I think that's great. I think any tight end, even the top ones, are a risk. You just never know. I think you're seeing more and more of these teams get versatile with these tight ends, like a Pitts and like a Bowers that's coming in this year, a Kincaid. So I think that there's a lot of different things that these tight ends do too. I think it's one of the toughest positions actually in the NFL to play because you've got to know what the running backs are doing. You got to know what the wide receivers are doing. You got to know what the linemen are doing. You got to be able to block. You got to be able to catch. You might have to, line up in the slot. Really, if you think about it, the tight end has to know almost every single position on that offense. So I think it's the toughest position to play. So these guys are really smart and stuff. Like I said, I always love to have the QB tight end connection on my fantasy team. If I don't have a stud tight end, because it's just to me it's depending on who your QB is, obviously, and if they like to use a tight end and stuff, it's paid benefits for me in the past. So with that said, again, we appreciate you guys listening, watching our videos. Check us out at Fantasy Fools PPR out on YouTube. Subscribe, like. We're also out on Snap, X, Instagram, TikTok. Check us out there. Wiggs has been doing a great job getting all those videos out there. And like we always say, hey, listen, we're not going to hit everything, but who does? I'll be honest, I just read something today where they were talking about who picked the most accurate sleepers last year. You know what? The guy that picked the most accurate sleepers wasn't even one of the guys that people usually follow. He's a guy that most people probably don't even know. So keep that in mind. We're not going to hit everything, but we're going to hit a lot of stuff. I feel we are. We like to pay attention and stuff. So take it for what it's worth. Again, if you don't like something that we say, just go back to the name. Fantasy Fools, man.
If you think we're a fool, we don't even care. You could cook us all you want. We're giving you our thoughts. We don't really.
We just appreciate you guys tuning in. and give us some feedback if there's any feedback that you have. And we hope that the information you get from us you find beneficial. We got a lot more content coming. You're probably going to see some of our drafts, our drafts live for some of our leagues. Wiggs has been working hard getting us in leagues. We're in our normal keeper league. We're in another keeper league.
Just got a dynasty league filled.
We're doing a dynasty league this year. You're gonna you'll see some stuff from that as well. So it's all going to be good content. So take it for what it's worth, and we just appreciate you guys tuning in.
I think you killed it right there, so we can sign on off. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks.